Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with a special guest, Robert F. Okay, I can't pronounce your last name. Can you do that for me?
It's DeFinis?
Yeah, see, I would butcher that.
That's okay.
I'm
here to help.
I try not to butcher names if I don't have to. So, you have a children's book out called The Corona Monster. Now, I can figure out the inspiration for this, but what makes this so age-appropriate? Let's put it that way.
So, well, you know what? It's funny. I think actually anybody can relate to it. I think we're all in this together. So, while it's a children's book, focused on 0 to 6, I think anybody can kind of read it and get a little chuckle from it. But the focus point really is for children to be empowered, to take a little bit of action here. I wrote it really for my own children at first. It was after the first couple of days of being kind of locked down, my children started to ask some questions like, when are we gonna be able to go back outside? When is school going to start again? When can I see our grandparents? Things like that. So I've been working on some children's books. They're in different stages, and this kind of took precedent for me because the end goal is to help and to provide educators and parents and families with some resources to have open discussions on what's going on. And more importantly, how do you empower children to take some action? They don't want to be left out too, right? Mm-hmm. So this also allows them to understand the importance of, washing your hands, covering your cough and sneeze, creating social distance. That's a new concept for children, right? Most children, we teach them the opposite, hug and, hold hands and those types of things. Mm-hmm. And now we're saying, to be a little bit safe and make sure we don't get sick, we need to, create a little bit of distance here.
Right. It's a new concept for so many people to be separated from most of society. So
right.
I think any adult that's going through a hard time right now with this whole virus should actually pick up some children's books, yours included, just to go through, hey, maybe we need to change our thinking just a little bit.
That's an excellent point. I've been someone who's, now writing children's books. You're constantly reading them, and so many great titles and wonderful messages, and they could resonate with a lot of people right now. Simple things like the concepts in my book, but even being neighbors, good citizenship, things like that. Where right now we need all people to take a little bit of responsibility, right, and help each other out in this time. And there's so many great, wonderful messages that you can be found in children's books.
Exactly. I think there's more positive messages in children's books that read than there are in adult books.
Absolutely. I think the messaging is very important. I think a lot of children authors try to, create some type of message or a takeaway, right? Mm-hmm. Something that you're going to impart with the child after they read the story. Obviously, creativity and illustration is so critical in storytelling, but I think messaging is equally important.
Correct. I mean, okay, we have the coronavirus. We need to teach the kids about it. I was actually watching something last night where overseas, instead of the displacement camps because of the virus, the workers are dressing up as a virus to teach the kids about the virus in a way that they understand.
I think bringing it to their level, right, to making sure, I always say this is something I say, the best instructional information, resources and tools are normally created for children, right? It's I call it kid-friendly, information, so children can absorb it and understand it and relate to it. So that's fantastic. I think this also, everything that's going on, it also has presented opportunity to be a little bit extra creative, especially with our children. And the schooling that has shifted to, more homeschooling and distance learning. I think educators, I think families are being a little bit more creative in their approach. And I welcome that. And when I hear stories like the one you just said, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, we are all getting creative. Within the first 2 weeks, we got very creative raising kids at home.
Yeah, it was a shift, right? And there was a lot of people, I think they gave us, the first phase of it was, telling us that it was going to be, a few weeks indoors, and everybody, everybody got creative and everybody was okay with it. But now, as we start to shift, another thing the book, I think, addresses, and it was intentional, is, the mental well-being, right? Mm-hmm. Because now as we shift in isolation, we've been in this for now over 8 weeks, things start to get a little frustrating. And I think, we're also looking for books and material and ways to reinforce messaging, right? To reinforce the concept that we need to continue on just a little bit more, because things are getting better. The tide is turning a little bit and the numbers decrease every single day. So we're hoping that, the messaging continues on and we continue to take action. So the mental well-being, I think, is very important for children to keep that positivity kind of rolling.
Right, and the thing is, right now we're going to summer, so we have all the nice weather. So what do we want to do during the nice weather? We want to socialize, but so you have to really enforce your mind. No, we still need to keep our distance for safety, but it's okay to socialize. Just do it in a safe manner. If we're teaching the kids now, we're going to have our kids go, Mommy, Daddy, don't do that. Remember, we need to be this distance. My daughter does this when she was little. She still does this to an annoying degree now that she's a teenager. If there's something I'm doing that isn't right, she'll stop. No, Mom, you're not supposed to do that.
Right, putting the, reinforcing and putting the brakes on and reminding that this, it's not over. Things are getting better, but we still have a little bit of distance to go. And I'm enjoying also seeing additional information come out, kind of like the book that I wrote, that's helping to support the isolation, to support the mental well-being, letting parents know that there are, great resources out here that are available. And I think it's great. I think the more information that we have at our fingertips, and again, putting it into a format that's relatable. If it's not relatable and, children don't find it somewhat entertaining and engaging, they're not going to read it, but they're also not going to, participate in the opportunity to, I keep saying it, empowering them to be little superheroes, right? And I have a saying that, every child is a superhero in waiting or in training, right? They're trying to earn their cape, and if we give them the right tools to do that, then they can go out and they can make a positive difference. And that's really what the title was all about.
Exactly. Now, you said you write other children's books. Are those out, or are they coming out?
Yeah, so I have been working on, I was talking to someone yesterday, and we were and they were talking about, writing, the writing process and things like that. So I've always enjoyed writing, personally. I think it has, so many gifts intrinsically, right? Therapeutic gifts, again, mental well-being, also expression. And I've always been someone who has written personally. And when I went into my dissertation and complete my doctorate program, academic writing is sometimes painful, and that process kind of took the writing life out of me. And so I took a little bit of a break after I finished my dissertation, reading and writing. I needed that little, kind of decompress, transition, back to more personal writing. And I had some projects in the pipeline that I started working on because I'm doing both. I'm doing the writing and illustration. So that takes a little bit of time. I wasn't an illustrator, by, trade. It's not something that I have an inherent ability to do. So there was a lot of learning and testing and trying and learning the different software applications. So I've had two that I've been working on, and then this came up, and the messaging and the story kind of came to me as I was, again, helping my own children. So this kind of took precedent, and I put the other two kind of back on the back burner again, and just started this week to pick it back up. They are in different phases. I have a title that I'm hoping to release this summer called Lady P's First Day, and it's about my very little energetic 4-year-old who will be entering kindergarten come the fall. And it's interesting because I already had it in my mind what it would look like, and now that everything has changed, I'm kind of revisiting a lot of the storyline and the scenes because kindergarten could look very different for children in the fall. So I'm taking another look at that. And then I have another series that's more sports related, children learning new sports and the challenges and opportunities that come with trying something new. And that's going to be out in the winter. So they're in different stages, coming along very nicely. And both you can see some of the artwork and some of the storyline on my website.
Awesome. And the name of your website is?
It's drdefinis.com. DRDEFINIS.com.
Awesome. Now, your books are geared toward 0 to kindergarten, basically. Now, what does your children say about your books?
So, I think they're my best critics. I show them different pieces of it or, different it's actually called How to Defeat the Icky, Filthy, Creepy, Slimy CORONA Monster. And when I started to write it, it was actually in stanza. So it had a rhyming pattern. And I enjoy that. It's, some people think, it's easy to rhyme, but you have to kind of, you're kind of exploring and expanding and trying to figure out kind of what fits, but also how to, make the story kind of pop off the page because there's going to be illustration to it. So when I started to do this, I started with the stanza, and I think also by putting it in rhyming format, it allows the child to also remember pieces of it, right? Because they're going to repeat it and rhyme it, and it's going to it's like a little bit of a mantra that kind of gets stuck in their head. So my daughter loved it. My son, he's like, well, why don't you try this and do this? And I love it because he has a very creative mind and taking his suggestions and things like that. And also it empowers him to be part of the project. So they've enjoyed this last one. I show them always, some of the art concepts and some of the storyline and they are big time readers. They love books. So it's nice to be able to, make that connection with them, sharing my work and also the work of others.
Awesome. So now I know I write for teens, normally, teens and to adults. My daughter loves being part of the process, but at the same time, she's getting to the point of, Mom, I just don't care anymore. Your story isn't as intriguing for me because I know everything.
She's a teenager, right?
Right. Your typical 17-year-old. The first 3 books, she was my editor. The first 3 books, she was helping me with the everything. So now I'm into the 4th book. I'm struggling with the cover design because I keep going back and forth between what I'm wanting as an illustrator, what I want to show and what I don't want to show on the cover. And then I'm going back and forth with the story. I'm like, I don't have her to bounce the story off of like I had for the first 3, so I'm struggling.
There are so many, I think, because we're all connected now with, digital and social media and groups and pages, there are fantastic resources out there just to drop a line on, an author's page to say, hey, listen, I have a concept idea. Can I run it by a group of people? Anybody interested in reading a page or two? And you'd be so surprised, right, to see the network of people out there that are kind of just willing to kind of support other authors. Another thing that I was blown away with, I took a different approach with this particular. So by using other platforms that aren't necessarily, I would say, more mainstream, and putting it out there and making it available, it kind of like it took off, and now I have tons of people asking to do read alouds or translate it into another language, and that also gives, I think, an author an opportunity not only to showcase and share their work, but also to get creative feedback for their next project. Things I didn't even think of doing in this particular book that I'm definitely going to do for the next two, because I received that level of feedback. And I think I know when we're writing something, it doesn't matter if it ever gets out into the universe, but we're very protective of our work, right? We don't, sometimes it's like maybe too protective, but I think if we release some of it, we allow people to give a little bit of peer review feedback, or even just kind of, putting together a little focus group of teenagers to say, hey, listen, what do you think about this chapter? And getting that feedback, I think, it's going to be so valuable to your project.
Exactly. Well, with translation, here's another thing. I'm doing translations for my publishing house. I mean, there's only like 12 of us, but with 12 of us, there's like 50 books. So
right.
So I'm like, oh, this is a huge undertaking doing all the translations, because I'm trying to do it myself as I know the languages that I'm trying to translate into. But at the same time, I'm like, 50 books is a little daunting.
Yeah, that's a big undertaking.
I mean, we're not talking children's books. I mean, a children's book I can have done in a couple of days, because there's, 6 lines per book or per page, maybe?
Right.
It's a lot easier translating a children's book into foreign languages than a full-length novel.
Yeah, no, that's and that's a huge undertaking. And I would suggest, I think that there is a lot of opportunity out there. I had a young lady reach out to me she lives in Spain, and she's she's a college student, and she's like, hey, listen, can I take the book and for a class project, I like to translate it into Spanish and Portuguese. And I'm like, go at it. Like, I mean, I'm not going to stop you. And so I think that there's also opportunities out there, again, by putting the work out there, or putting the quarry out there and saying, hey, listen, this is what I'm looking for. Is there anyone out there that has this particular skill set? And you'd be, you'd be surprised how many people are going to reach out to you, and they want to help. They want to help, and they want to. If you're in literacy and you love books and you love explaining and storytelling and narrative, I think that you're going to find a good community of like-minded people to support you.
Exactly. Authors are, we are either a very strong community, or we have our broken links, I'll so call them. We have the ones that are a very tight-knit community. We're very protective over each other's work, and we truly want to see each other succeed. Then our broken links are the ones that give us negative everything. Because it's not something wrong with us, it's something wrong with the way they're perceiving or taking our feedback to their work. It's not we're attacking anyone. We're trying to give you an honest feedback. We respect you and want that feedback back.
Yeah, with feedback, I think, I always say this, you can take it or leave it, right? So I'm always on the opinion of get your work out there, get the feedback, bring it in. And then I always say, if 2 or 3 people are telling me that, well, you know what, I wouldn't do this, or I would change that, it's probably good sound advice, right? That you might want to consider another way forward. But also, there are times, even with this title, I had a few people in the industry take a look at it, and, they were like, I used one or two words where they're like, that might be a little bit higher or above the reading, the reading level of the, the children who are going to, read this book. And so what I went back and did, and I was like, that's a good point. And I went and I went back into books. I started to read, I pulled a dozen or so books out off the children's shelf. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, here's the feedback, and here's what I'm reading. And there were some words in there, and I'm like, you know what? This is well above a kindergartner. Does it make sense to take out? Or should I be exposing the child to something new, a new word? There's an opportunity for a parent who's reading a book to a child to stop and explain what a bystander is, because they've never come across that word. So I took some of the feedback, used it, fantastic. Some of it I said, you know what, I'm going to continue on this path. And I think as the creative person behind any story, you take and you choose and you look at the support and you reflect on it, and then you have to make the ultimate decision.
Exactly. No matter what you're doing, feedback is just feedback. You can take it or leave it. It doesn't matter if it's the color of your hair or something you're writing. It's up to you to decide what feedback you're going to listen to. Now, you don't want to listen to just all the positive. You have to listen to the negative and go, okay, think about it. And like we said, is this sound advice or is this something that, no, I want to leave it?
Correct. And, at the end of the day, this. I mean, you're going to answer to the reader. So you have to be open to the idea that you're adaptable to some type of change, and if you're not, then you accept the responsibility and you move on.
Correct. It's going to be, what does the reader say? We as authors, we need feedback. We need reviews. We need the reader connection. We make ourselves so openly available to our readers so we can connect with you, so we can get that feedback. What are your children saying about this children's book? What are you saying about this teenage book? What are you saying about the romance novel that you're reading? We need that feedback, for one, so we can grow as an author, and two, so we can get the next book fine-tuned to what the readers are expecting.
And I agree with that last point so strongly. This has been a wonderful learning opportunity for me, and I'm glad that the two books that I'm working on, they're passion projects. They've taken a good chunk of time, and I haven't really released a lot of the information out. And then I moved forward with this one pretty aggressively, and this has been a learning opportunity, but also it's going to make the other two pieces so much better. So I'm very thankful for that.
Exactly. We learned from our first book. Whatever the first book is that we publish, it can be complete trash and we get negative feedback off the wall, or it could be great but needs to be fine-tuned. We learn from that feedback, so the next 2 books, the next 10 books are better. Each one grows. It doesn't matter if it's a children's book or an adult book. We grow by our feedback. Correct. And then we also grow by what's happening around us, because right now, with being creative, there's 20,000 things that we could write about.
Yeah, and I think for me, the taking a pause and looking at what's kind of going on, it's already created for me to change and adjust the next book I'm working on. I had in my mind, I envisioned how it would look and the characters and the storyline, and then interestingly enough, that might not actually resonate now, right, with readers of the future, where children might be wearing masks in school, or the school day will look very different, or maybe we don't return in the fall. And so my concept of a traditional school day could also need to change, right? So I need to change, my approach to the story as well. So, yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, we don't know what this fall is going to look like for kids. We really don't have a crystal ball. We can go back and do from beginning of the school year back what it would have looked like, but we don't know what it's going to look like this year. So we're all waiting on feedback. A lot of it's going to come from news, unfortunately, but how things are going to happen in school. So that affects our children's books. Are Miss Piggy books now going to have a mask when they go out shopping? Just throwing that out there for, I don't know if there's a Miss Piggy book out there.
No, yeah, that's a good point, because now when the child reads the book, they're going to say, well, why don't they have a mask on, or why aren't they doing X, Y, and Z? Because the new world that we're going to be approaching, it's going to be different for, a time period while we're adjusting, still learning. And but it also creates opportunity, like you said, the creative space. There's going to be, interestingly, I was, now I'm coming across like titles, and I love it, and I'm like, great, more people are in this space. It's going to bring attention. It's going to bring, necessary resources. So I welcome like titles and creative ideas around, this particular topic. I welcome it.
Exactly. We need to have more like-minded individuals out there to get some of these messages across. But we're almost out of time, so one more time, where can our listeners find you?
So I think the best resource to get in touch or to get a copy, either print or digital, would be on my website, again, drdefinis.com. The title is on a variety of platforms right now. Smashwords, just type in the author, my last name, and it'll pop up my book there. And I am doing a couple different promotions. All portions of money raised with this title also is going back to those that are negatively impacted by the coronavirus, specifically those organizations that are helping families during this time. That's near and dear to me, and I want to make sure families, teachers, educators, people in my space are supported. So the portions of all proceeds for digital copies are going, right to those organizations.
That is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. Thank you so much for coming on my show today. Yeah, my brain just went blank while I was talking. That's wonderful.
It's okay. It's still early. It's still a little early, so you're okay. And thank you for having me. I definitely enjoy sharing my story, and I love what you're doing out there for literacy and authors as well.
I'm trying to get as many authors some coverage as possible during this time, because what more can we do but read?
Yeah, we have plenty of time to open up a really good book and even from a children's perspective, share a good book with a child. I think it's a great time. So I agree.
Exactly. So for all of our listeners, happy reading.